Could Bijan Robinson become the next Christian McCaffrey? He hinted at it when speaking to the media, so I want to break that down with you guys today and go over some really fun stats and comparisons. Plus, we have some injury updates, including one on Robinson. And finally, a potential surprise starter coming out of OTAs. We'll get to it all on today's episode. But we reached 22,000 subscribers while I was stranded at Atlanta's airport for 30-plus hours. So shout out to everyone who subscribed. Hopefully a handful of you were American Airlines gate agents to try and smooth over that long delay. But if you have not joined the channel yet, make sure to go ahead and do so. Help us get to 23,000 subscribers today. All right, let's start by talking about Bijan Robinson because the new ESPN Falcons beat reporter Mark Ramiondi, Falcons running back Bijan Robinson said he believes he'll be used in 2024 the way Christian McCaffrey is in San Francisco. Quote, I'm going to be more of a runner that does everything else. So let's just talk about the idea of Bijan kind of morphing into a Christian McCaffrey, Mr. Do-It-All player, where McCaffrey, of course, so good on the ground, so good at the goal line, so good as a receiver. McCaffrey is probably the best well-rounded back in the NFL, and it's not even close. And he might be the best, all-around versatile back we have seen in quite some time. Robinson last year in his rookie season had 976 rushing yards, 487 receiving yards. So you can see there's a long way to go to get to Christian McCaffrey's numbers, especially in the touchdown column. But Christian McCaffrey didn't start that way off either. Overall, I feel like there are some similarities in Bijan and CMC's game. I mean, in order to be the next Christian McCaffrey, you have to prove your worth as a receiver, right? That's kind of step one in my eyes for being the next Christian McCaffrey because there's lots of great rushers, but McCaffrey brings that second element to his game. And I think that is something that Bijan is capable of because we saw so much of it at Texas and even in his rookie season. But I'm not going to just completely punt on the idea that Bijan can't be McCaffrey because he didn't put up the same numbers McCaffrey did last year. Worth reminding you guys, Christian McCaffrey in his rookie season, he rushed for 435 yards and had 651 receiving yards. So even Christian McCaffrey needed a little bit of time ramping up to the NFL speed, and Bijan had a very, very good rookie season. Now, I do want to share some really interesting stats and numbers with you guys here. I usually don't like going into the rabbit hole of two stats combination and a list of few guys that accomplished it, but here's a list of 10 running backs in NFL history that were rookie running backs with 950-plus rushing yards and 450-plus receiving yards. There's a couple of, Hall of Famers on this list, like Marshall Faulk for starters, Edgerrin James as well. So this is, in my opinion, really good company to be a part of. Like Saquon Barkley, Kareem Hunt, two careers that probably didn't reach their max potential because of injuries and off-the-field issues. Matt Forte, an absolute legend for the Chicago Bears. So, yeah, I would say being on this list of names is a really, really good thing. But I'm very excited for Bijan in 2024 because I expect a big workload for him. And I think that's what makes Christian McCaffrey so successful in San Francisco, right? He is the guy that gets the football on first, second, and third down. He gets the ball in every single possible scenario. There's no vulture coming in like Mike Tolbert to steal the touchdowns at the goal line. Now, do we have any way to base all this off of what we know from the Rams? Because that's kind of the closest point of data points of, hey, what to expect from the Falcons based on the new coaching staff coming over from LA. I mean, I looked since 2021, Rams running backs who have had multiple starts. Darrell Henderson, 21 starts since 2021. Kyron Williams, 11 last year. Cam Akers made 10 starts. Sony Michel, 7. Ronnie Rivers, 2. So if you think about it from the Rams' perspective, or I should say from the Falcons' new coaching staff perspective, Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson, who come over from the LA Rams, they never had a true number one back, right? They were constantly rotating guys based on who was healthy and who didn't suck. Because Darrell Henderson, was usually their only option, but he wasn't a very good option. They didn't like that option. So they constantly were looking at different running backs. So for this new coaching staff in Atlanta, it's got to be a huge sigh of relief. They don't have to do this carousel anymore of 5 different starting running backs since 2021. In Atlanta, they've got their guy. It's Bijan Robinson. And I expect them to pound the rock with him a lot because they couldn't do that in LA. And that has been one of the biggest weaknesses for the Rams ever since winning the Super Bowl was they don't have any sort of traction on the ground. There's zero consistency. They only got going last year with Kyren Williams for the second half of the year. And look what happened. They went from being below 500 to making the playoffs and nearly knocking out the Lions in Detroit. So it's safe to say the Rams are looking for some consistency on the ground because they haven't had it. And this coaching staff that just gets to Atlanta is definitely happy to see some consistency with a number one back like Bijan Robinson. Now, let me ask you all this question. Would you take Robinson top 5 in fantasy football this year? No one gives a shit about your fantasy team, but if I did, would you guys take top 5? I would definitely be in the top 5 neighborhood. I think it's Christian McCaffrey 1, Justin Jefferson 2, and then Bijan is not too far behind. I feel like fantasy football drafts this year are going to be a bit weird. The running backs are, questionable at some spots. So let me know. Give me a yes or give me a no. Okay, next up on the show, I want to run through some injury news and updates, plus a surprise starter potentially in the works. We'll get to all that in just a brief moment. But first, it's time to hear from everyone's favorite sponsor, PrizePicks. That's right. With PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you are locked in. If you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks got you covered every week. From lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chance of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. So speaking of Tuesdays, it's Taco Tuesday. So I'm taking the more on Seth Lugo, taking the more on Jason Tatum at 0.5 points for Game 1 of the NBA Finals on Thursday. And then also give me the more on Connor McDavid at 3.5 shots on goal for the Edmonton Oilers. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So some injury news to get to. A couple of pretty notable faces returning to the practice field. Bijan Robinson is back after suffering kind of a minor ankle sprain, as he put it. And then A.J. Terrell was battling a hamstring injury. He is back as well. So very encouraging to see, especially because the initial timeline for Bijan was he'll be back by mandatory minicamp, which is next week. And he's already back for the final week of OTA. So that's awesome to see. As for Terrell, that was always just a precautionary measure. It's a soft tissue injury or soft tissue issue. It's May, June, OTAs. No reason to push it this far away from the season. I also want to touch on Kirk Cousins for a second here because he's not really an injury because he's been out there the whole time, but despite him suffering a ruptured torn Achilles 7 months ago, he doesn't look like it. Like, he may not be the fastest guy on the practice field, but let's be honest, Kirk Cousins was never the fastest guy on the football field. So I think there's a lot to like about what we have seen from Kirk Cousins so far. It's been pretty quiet on the Michael Penix front just because Kirk Cousins has looked like a quarterback who throws for over 4,000 yards and nearly 30 touchdowns. Despite it just being OTAs, he's got zip and accuracy on his football. He's taking command of the huddle. He's taking leadership and control of this team. I mean, he talked about how he's going to take his offensive line to Texas Roadhouse, my favorite restaurant in the world. You better believe those guys are going to go through all the roles they have. And he said, RIP to Red Lobster. So what's not to love about Captain Kirk right now, fitting in with his new teammates in Atlanta? Now let's talk about some other OTAs notes and just takeaways I've gathered so far through the final or going into the final week of organized team activities. We'll go depth chart by depth chart here, starting with the linebacker. So Caden Ellis has been the dominant number one linebacker throughout practice, meaning he has not left the first team defense. Meanwhile, Troy Anderson and Nate Landman, they have been rotating with the first team defense. So giving Nate Landman an opportunity to kind of hold on to the starting job he took over from Troy Anderson. And by the way, rookie JT Bertrand 5th-round pick from Notre Dame, he's even gotten some looks with the first-team defense at inside linebacker. Let's talk about defensive line now. So David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett are not a part of OTAs. Jarrett coming back from a torn ACL. David Onyemata, just 30-plus years old. He doesn't really need to be there, which means there's opportunities for guys lower on the depth chart to get a look with the first and second-team defense. Taquan Graham and Ricky Rook-Aroro have been rotating in with the first-team defense, and then Contavious Street and Zion Logue have been with the second-team defense. That front five for Atlanta, by the way, also has Bradley Anae going with the first-team defense opposite of Arnold Ebiketie. So a bit of a surprise, to say the least. He was a Dallas Cowboy that got cut after having a really dumb penalty, and his career never really recovered since then. But he's getting an opportunity to play with the Falcons now, and kudos to him for taking advantage of it. And not really sure what's going on with Lorenzo Carter for him not to be with the first-team defense, but that's supposed to be your starting number 2 edge rusher. Needless to say, the concern level ticks up a little bit if he can't even defeat Bradley Anae, no offense, Bradley, for that starting outside linebacker role in what's going to be a shaky pass rush the way it's looking at the moment. And then as for Atlanta's secondary, DeMarco Hellams has been with the first-team defense opposite of Jesse Bates. So Clark Phillips, who started the last year at safety, has been rotating in with Hellams, but it looks like it's Jesse Bates and Hellams. And then as for your corners, it's A.J. Terrell, of course, Clark Phillips running at CB2, and then D. Alford running at the nickel position right there, what I've been saying all offseason long to expect as your starting cornerbacks. Mandatory minicamp is June 10th through the 12th. That'll be the last time we see the Falcons before they get released for the summer, and then they come back for training camp at the end of July, early August. So ultimately, OTAs are a fun way to get some football content in our life, but to be honest with you, there shouldn't be major takeaways that come out of organized team activities. I mean, coaches use this as an opportunity to really just get the foundation and the install in with some of the young players, the rookies, and the new guys that just joined the team. Players that have been there for a long time, even though it's a new coaching staff and sure there's new things to learn, it's not as crucial for them to be a part of these voluntary practices. I wouldn't say they're glorified walkthroughs, but there's no pads, and it's just a good opportunity for the coaches to kind of make sure that they can weed out the players that can't even do the little things right. You know what I mean? Hey, take the play call, line up in the right position. This wide receiver doesn't even know where he is on this play, and we're not even at training camp yet, and we're kind of going at 3/4 speed right now. This isn't going to work when it gets to full speed and the pads are on. That's really what OTAs, in my eyes, are used for when it comes to, hey, can a player really separate themselves from one another? No, you can't. There's no pads on. Football is played with pads on. But it does give you a decent glimpse as to some guys that may be in for a big season because they put some good work in the offseason. All right, that will do it for us. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Obviously, very happy to be back in studio today and no longer filming from future in-laws' guest room with the birds chirping in the backgrounds. That was quite the trip. But we will sign off, and we will see you all later.